Okay, so now we are going to start our study series, Nectar in a Sieve. So when we study this novel, its title, Nectar in a Sieve, its title is very important. So actually, this has been taken from a text written by Samuel Tyler, Nectar in a Sieve. So towards the end of our study series, we are going to discuss all the important areas, specific points, and thematic concerns of this novel. So I'm going to start our first session, chapter 1. Sometimes at night, I think that my husband is with me again, coming gently through the mist, and we are tranquil together. So now this novel starts with a reflection or an imagination. At night, I think, the character Rukmani, thinks that her husband is with her again. So what does it suggest? It suggests that this person, husband, is no more with her, coming gently through the mist, coming gently, and we are tranquil together, we are peaceful, we don't have any disturbances. Without any disturbances, we can get together. Then morning comes. The wavering gray turns to gold. The wavering gray. So that refers to wavering in the sense kind of slight or weak gray. It refers to the darkness of night. So the slight darkness also fading away with the golden sun rays, turns to gold. Gold refers to the morning sun rays. There is a stir in within the sleepers awake. Now it is the time for the sleepers to awake. There is a stir, that means an excitement or activeness. Excitement within their houses as well as within their minds. And he softly departs. He refers to her husband. Softly departs. So now here you have to pay attention towards the use adverbs and also other words to describe the manners of her husband. Gently, softly, tranquil together. She is much contented. She is much satisfied with her husband. One by one, they come out into the early morning sunshine. My son, my daughter, and Puli. So now they are coming out. They refers to children. Puli, the child I clung to in the sense I adopted, to who was not mine. So that child is not mine. And he no longer a child. Puli is with me because I tempted him. That means because I urge him to come with me, urge him to live with me. I influence him to come and live with me. Out of my desperation, out of my hopelessness, I lured in the sense I persuade, I impress him away from his soil to mine. His soil to mine. His soil refers to his native land. So I impress him to give up his own native land and come to live with me. Yet I have no fears now. I don't have any fears about it now. What is done is done. There can be no repining. What is done is done. So this line is this quotation is very important. What is done. Bygones are bygones. There can be no repinings, no need of feeling sad about anything already happened. Are you happy with me? I said to him yesterday, being sure of the answer. He nodded. He shook his head. So that is his answer for this question. Are you happy with me? Now, hesitating, but a little impatient, but he was a little impatient when he was answering that question. And all woman's fibers, a need for comfort. So fiber in the sense weakness. So it is a weakness of an old woman to need a comfort. Need for a comfort. Now she wants to make her mind because she is doubtful. She's doubtful whether Puli likes to live with her or not. So that is why she needs to find out any kind of resolution. She needs any type of comfort of her mind. She needs to make up her mind. But I'm comforted most when I look at his hands. His hands. He has no fingers, only stubs in the sense half fingers. Since what has been taken can never be given back. What has been taken, the things that we lost, we can never get them back. But they are clean and sound in the sense in good condition. Where the sores were, where the wounds were. Now it is a description about Pule's hands. Where the wounds were, there is now pink puckered flesh. Pink wrinkled flesh. Flesh in the sense meat, you know the meaning. Pink wrinkled flesh. His limbs are untouched. His limbs are not harmed, not damaged from this particular disease. Kenny and Zelvam, between them, have kept my promise to him. Kenny and Zelvam, Kenny and her child, between them have kept my promise to him. That means they have given kind of a promise in order to look after this child. Now here, the predominant thing is coping mechanism against the suffering. So when you study the character of Rukmani, so her characteristic, this is kind of her characteristic. So she is a stoic character. We can label Rukmani as a stoic character. What do you mean by stoic? Stoic. Following the concepts, the ideologies of Stoicism. So that is called stoic character. So now Rukmani has undergone a lot of troubles in her life, so many troubles, so many sorrows in her life. So she has two types of coping mechanisms in order to defend herself from sufferings. Sufferings running arakshavenna, because she can't fall herself down. She can't fall her mentality down. She needs some kind of mechanism to build up herself again. There might be some kind of mechanism for that, some kind of system for that. So coping mechanisms. So this is kind of, this is somewhat psychological. When we examine characters, we have to examine their psychological build-up also. So when we talk about this character of Rukmani, so we have to look at her psychology also. Okay, so earlier I told you that Rukmani as a stoic person. So stoic person in this, here you can see the meaning, a person who accepts what happens without complaining or showing emotion. Without showing emotion, without complaining to accept each and everything that happened to her. Stoic person can bear any sufferings. So now a stoic person is a person who believes in stoicism, who practices stoicism. Stoicism, it teaches now as I have mentioned here, stoicism teaches the development of self-control and fortitude as a means of overcoming destructive emotions. As human beings, we all get a lot of destructive emotions time to time. A lot of sufferings will be there. So we need some kind of mechanism to overcome those destructive emotions, because we need to make our mind. There must be any kind of mechanism. So stoicism is one mechanism that we can use in order to overcome from our sufferings. For example, imagine that you got failed your exam. You got failed your literature exam. So what will happen? You'll be upset. But you need a mechanism to cope up with your sorrow. ඔයාගේ sorrow එක විභාගේ fail වෙනා කියන එක හින්දා එන sorrow එක overcome කරන්න there should be a particular mechanism for that. So then you would think that I have done very difficult subject. English language and literature is very difficult subject. Yes, I've failed the exam, but it's worthwhile. It's very valuable because I studied very difficult subject. So that would be your mechanism. That would be the mechanism that you're using to overcome your sorrow, your sadness of failing an exam. A philosophy of life that maximizes positive emotions, maximizing. Yes, you tends to see any kind of positive aspect, even in sadness also. Even in your sufferings also, you tend to find out a positive aspect. So it helps, this type of behavior, this type of ideology helps you to maximize positive emotions and also to minimize your negative emotions. So when we study about this Rukmani's character, so there also it's visible that she's using stoicism as well as another mechanism is there, composure, in order to get rid of her negative thoughts. Okay, so not only here, but also throughout this novel, you might be able to find out the places where Rukmani is using her coping mechanisms to defend against her sadness and all the sufferings. So that is very important. And the distance when it is a fine day and my sight is not too dim. My sight is not too dim. When I can clearly see, her eyesight is still good. I can see the building where my son works. I can see the building. She's referring to a building. He and Kenny, the young and the old. He is the young one. Kenny is the old one. A large building, spruce and white. Spruce in the sense widespread building. And white in color. Not only money has built it, but means hopes and pity. As I know who have seen it grow brick by brick and year by year. So now this quotation is very important. Not only money has built it, it refers to the building. Money but men's hopes and pity. Men's hopes. Hopes refers to men's expectations, their life expectations, their wishes, and their future ambitions, dreams, all of those things. Hopes. And pity, it refers to their sadness, their sorrows. So people, they like to see the finished construction. They want to see the completion of this construction. So just after, the setting is just after the independence. So now India has got a rapid development in this era. So infrastructure facilities are gradually developing in this era. So now here it is mentioned, as I know who have seen it grow brick by brick. Now the building is growing. It refers to the construction of the building, the process of construction of this building. Brick by brick, gadaling gadala me, building neka grow venama. And year by year, she was observing the construction, the entire procedure of constructing of this building. My three sisters were married long before I was. Shanta first, a big wedding which lasted, which continued for many years. Now, her memory goes back to her childhood. Now, she is again speaking about her childhood. Plenty of gifts and feast, diamond earrings, a gold necklace. Now, she's talking about her sister Shanta's wedding. It was kind of a splendid wedding, luxurious wedding, as befitted the daughter of the village headman. Now, their father is village headman, the leader of the village, befitted the daughter of. So all the wedding celebration of this marriage, and also all the elements of this wedding befitted the daughter of the village headman. So those things were suitable for the wedding of the village headman's daughter, village headman ke daughter ke wedding ekak. So all of these things, gifts and feasts, and the wedding which lasted for many days, continued for many days. So all of these items befitted to the daughter of the village headman. Padmini next, and she too made a good match. She too made a good match, so that we can get an idea that the other sister Shanta, she also had a good match, made a good match. Good match of what? Good husband, matching husband, and was married fittingly in a suitable way, taking jewels and dowry with her. Jewels and dowry, it's very important. So the dowry system in India, it's very important aspect when we talk about Indian culture and Indian marriage. So dowry, without dowry, Indian girls, they were unable to find out a good partner to marry. Dowry was a crucial factor in their marriages, and as well as it affects their life. Dowry, without a dowry, Indian daughters were unable to marry. So dowry is kind of a defining factor of their life. But when it came to Thangam, only relations from our own village came to the wedding, village relations, and not from the surrounding district, district, as they had done before. But earlier, for the earlier marriages, all the relations from surrounding areas also came to our wedding function. But now, for Thangam's wedding, they did not come because it was not such a splendid wedding as they had earlier. And the only jewel she had was a diamond, no screw ekak, no screw ekak utrai yata tibbe. So now here, the important thing is that partnerships are determined by family networks and considerations of wealth and social status. So when it comes to marriages, it was kind of a reflection, showing off of one's social, economical status, and also power. It's kind of an exhibition. People exhibit their power, their economic status, their social power in their marriages. What for you, my mother would say, taking my face in her hands, My last born, my baby. Now she is the youngest. 4 dowries is too much for a man to bear. 4 dowries. Dowries hatarak den එක. So it's too much for a man to bear. I shall have a grand wedding, I would say, such that everybody will remember when all else is a dream forgotten. I would say, yes, now she's telling, I shall have a grand wedding. So as a child, it shows her childish attitude. She wanted to have a grand wedding, very big wedding, such that everybody will remember when all else is a dream forgotten. So now her wedding will make, her grand wedding will make all the other weddings forgotten to everybody. එයාගේ wedding එක දැක්කම අනිත් සේරම weddings, grand weddings අමතක වෙලා යන තරමේ grand wedding එකක් එයාට ඕනෙලු. So now here 4 dowries is too much for a man to bear. So it is very important. It's kind of a reflection of the society. The society has suppressed the role of father in the society. So if a father has several daughters, so it was kind of unbearable for him when it comes to their dowry, when it comes to organizing their weddings and also giving dowries. So it was unbearable for the fathers who had daughters in that particular time period. I heard this praise in a storyteller's tale, for is not my father head of the village. Now she's thinking that. She's thinking that because my father is the head of the village, I would have such a grand wedding. I knew this pleased my mother, this in the sense, this speaking. For she would not once laugh and lose her look of worry. So earlier she looked worried because she was troubling, she was thinking about her marriage. So once, when I repeated this, this refers to what? Repeated telling about my grand wedding. My eldest brother overheard me, and he said sharply, "Don't speak like a fool. The headman is no longer of consequence." The concept of headman, it's not a reason for being powerful. It doesn't have any power now. There is the collector who comes to these villages once a year. Then you know a bit of collector. Then headman කියන්නේ අපි powerful වෙන්න තියෙන reason එකක් නෙමෙයි. And to him is the power, and to those he appoints, not to the headman. Headman doesn't have any power. So this is also a very important depiction of the society in that time period, especially the political system in that time. So after the independence, we can see kind of a lot of changes in the political system in India. So here you can see the changes undergone with the local authorities and representatives of British imperial government. So earlier in the past, the entire village, the ruling system of the village is centered around local authorities like village headman. But now those type of ruling system, it is centered to the British government, imperial government. So the collector, he is an officer in this imperial government. So the centralization of authority is depicted here. So it is very important concept that you have to look for. So centralization of authority. So that is about the political system in that time period. Before that, village headman. Village headman is kind of a representation of the old political system in India. So now they have collector. the collector, he is a government officer and he is a representative to the newly imposed ruling system by the imperial government. This was the first time I had ever heard that my father was of no consequence. It was as if a prop on which I leaned had been roughly kicked away. So prop in the sense kind of a temporary supporter. I was on a temporary supporter, but unfortunately it was roughly kicked away by that statement of my elder brother. So it is like that I was on a prop. I was staying on a temporary supporter, but the supporter was roughly kicked away by my elder brother. And I felt frightened and refused to believe him. Him refers to elder brother. So now here you have to pay attention towards, as a child, how she felt such a situation, such an argument made by her brother. Frightened, and she refused at the very beginning. She refused to believe such an idea. It was unbelievable for her. But of course, he was right. But later on, she found out that her brother was right. And by the time I came to womanhood, even I had to acknowledge that his prestige was much diminished. So after I came to womanhood, then she got to know that his prestige, that means her father's respect or power, was much diminished in the sense decrease or reduce. Perhaps that was why they, that refers to her parents, could not find me a rich husband. Perhaps that was why, that was the reason. What is the reason? Because her father's prestige was reduced. So that is the reason which goes for her parents' inability to find out a rich husband for Rukmani, and married me to a tenant farmer. So tenant farmer, what's the meaning of tenant farmer? Here I have mentioned a tenant farmer, one who resides on land owned by a landlord. A tenant farmer doesn't have his own lands. Instead, he borrows lands from the landlords and he works on borrowed lands. So that is called tenant farmer. In singular, it is mentioned as Andagovya, who was poor in everything, but in love and care for me. But he loved me a lot and he cared me a lot. His wife, whom he took at the age of 12. Age of 12? She's a still child, no? So underage marriages were predominant thing in that era, especially in Indian society. Underage marriages, or as you can tell it as child marriages. So those are prominent in Indian society. It's kind of a reflection of Indian society, underage marriages. It's a way of child abusing. Our relatives, I know, murmured that the match was below me. Now, her relatives, they were telling various stories about this marriage, that the match was below me. So they were telling that this person, this tenant farmer, does not match me well, below me, lower than me. His status is lower than, his status are lower than me. So they are bearing such an idea about my marriage. My mother herself was not happy. So here you have to consider about other people's perception about their marriage. Relations perception, So they thought that the marriage was below than her level. And mother was not happy, but I was. Without beauty and without dowry. Beauty and dowry. So those were very important elements when it comes to a marriage in India. Beauty and dowry, those stereotypical things were considered as very important factors in a marriage. A girl should be very beautiful. And also a girl should have a big dowry. So those are type of stereotypical ideas in Indian society. And it was the best she could do. Now, Rukmani, she's not very beautiful. According to the perspective of Indian society, so-called Indian society, according to Indian society, she's not beautiful. And also she doesn't have sufficient dowry. Right? It was the best she could do. She refers to her mother. To arrange this marriage with a tenant farmer. It was the best. It in the sense, this marriage, arranging this marriage. A poor match, they said. Now other relations, they're telling that a poor match. They're not matching. And not always quietly, because sometimes they spoke aloud their rejection towards this marriage. How little they knew of any of them. How little they knew. That refers to relations. They knew nothing about my husband. By examining our outward appearance and our physical belongingness, our physical properties, they got into a decision that we do not match each other. How little they knew, how little my relations knew about us. Any of them. So now she is telling that her relations were not fully aware of the character, the personality of his husband. So that is why they call it as a poor match. Okay, so when it comes to this particular section of this now, so it was notable the society's idea about marriage, the society's perception of the idea of marriage. How do the society perceive marriage? And also matching each other in a marriage, how to make that matchmaking process. So what were the yardsticks? What were the measures that they had in order to matchmake between the two people? What were the yardsticks? In that society, there were a lot of measures that they used to check whether two people match each other or not. So they use economic status of them and social level, family background, and social prestige and power, and ethnicity, religion, caste, and creed, and age, and stability. When it comes to stability also, there are some variations of stability. Social stability as well as economic stability. So those things were considered as the measures of matchmaking, measures in a matchmaking process. So in this particular section, you have to note down the concept of marriage in that Indian society. So it's very important. How do people perceive this concept of marriage? It's very important. And also political issues at that time. It's also a very important point. Shifting of power. Earlier, the power was centralized around local authorities, but now the power is centralized around the imperial government. So that is another important fact that you have to pay attention. And also there is another important fact that you have to pay attention. That is the language used by the writer. language used by the writer, it's also very important, as it is mentioned here, as it is mentioned as not only money has built it, but men's hopes and pity. She's talking about men's hopes and pity. What can you, what type of idea that you can get from here? She's talking about men's hopes and pity. She's only mentioning about men. So then what about women? Don't they have their own hopes towards the completion of this construction? Okay, so by referring that point, we can tell that Kamala has used kind of a gendered language in her writing. So here I have mentioned about gendered language. So gendered language is commonly understood as language that has a bias towards a particular sex or social gender. So the language is inclined towards men, partial towards men. She has mentioned only about men's hopes. She hasn't mentioned about women's stuff. Men's hopes and pity. She's only talking about men's hope. The language is biased towards men. So as I mentioned here, examples of sexism in language. So when you deeply study the organization of a text, there you have to comment on the language also. The language used by the writer, it's also very important. So when it comes to some organization of text, you may find out sexism in language. So that is called kind of a gendered language. So the generic use of the masculine gender by a speaker, because here it is mentioned like pronouns only to refer masculine gender. So here it is mentioned a noun, men's hope, only talking about, only addressing a certain gender, only addressing masculine gender. So that can be seen in this text. So it is very important to have a note on the language when we are analyzing a particular literary text. So it is also one important thing when we study this part of the novel. Okay, so those are the specific points that we can found from the section that we study today.